The woman who gave her life, who braided her hair and called her precious, sat across from her husband's family and spoke a death sentence over her daughter's womb. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She spoke calmly, with the confidence of a confession rehearsed 1,000 times. She told them Adaeze could never give them a child. And then, like a vulture circling a dying fire, she offered a replacement, her own younger daughter. This is not a story about infertility. This is a story about the moment your own blood decides you are a sacrifice they are willing to make. Stay with me. It gets darker before the dawn. Her name was Adaeze Okonkwo. At 26, she walked down an aisle that stretched for 3 days, through a celebration in Enugu State that refused to end. Aunties arrived in a CB so bright it hurt to look directly at them. Children fell asleep on laps because the drums wouldn't stop. Adaeze didn't walk into rooms expecting stares. She walked in like sunlight, quietly, completely. You didn't notice her arrival until you realized everything looked better with her inside. Emeka found her at a graduation party. He went home that same night and told his mother, Mama Ngozi, "I have found the woman I will marry." His mother, a general in a wrapper, called him a fool. But Emeka smiled. Within 8 months, he visited with wine and kola nut. Within 14, they were man and wife. They built a life on a quiet street. They cooked on Sundays. They argued about nothing and made up before morning. It was the kind of real everyone pretends to have. But there was a shadow. The pregnancy everyone expected didn't come. Mama Isa's eyes drifted to Adaeze's stomach with the subtlety of a hammer. Aunties whispered. They suggested village women and herbs. But behind closed doors, Emeka and Adaeze had a plan. A doctor found a manageable hormonal imbalance. Absolutely possible, the specialist said. Just a matter of time. Emeka held her hand. He meant it. They were patient in private. They had no idea someone else was plotting in the dark. The snake was named Oluoku, her mother, a market trader, a widow, a woman who loved her children, but loved one with a terrible, exclusive hunger. The third daughter, Obiageli, Obi, was 23, loud, beautiful, and had started 3 businesses that all collapsed. She wanted what Adaeze had, not just a man. Emeka, specifically. She watched her sister's life and told her mother, Adaeze doesn't appreciate what she has. Oluoku didn't shut it down. She just looked away. And Obi heard the silence. Oluoku drove to Mama Isa's house on a Tuesday in October. She drank tea. She spoke of the market, the weather. And then she set the fire. Adaeze is barren, she said. The doctors confirmed it. No remedy. She didn't mention the treatable imbalance. She didn't mention the hope. She used the old, devastating word. And then she smiled. But my younger daughter, Obiageli, she is available. She can give your son the child he needs. It wasn't an argument. It was an arrangement. The machine was set in motion. Mama Ise, hungry for a grandchild, swallowed the lie whole. Emeka came home different, distracted, distant, holding her too long. When Adaeze pried the truth out, she didn't scream about the barren accusation. She went cold, because she knew her body. What broke her was the source. Her own mother. And then she asked the question that cracked the case open. Has your mother mentioned Obiageli? The silence on Emeka's face told her everything. The betrayal wasn't a mistake. It was a transaction. 3 weeks later, Emeka was quiet. Not cold, he couldn't do cold, but distracted. He looked at Adaeze like a man carrying a heavy bag he hadn't decided to put down. Mama Ise called. She asked Emeka to come home alone for the weekend. Not, bring your wife. Alone. Adaeze kissed him at the door. She watched his car vanish down the street with a feeling in the bottom of her chest she refused to name. She knew. She just didn't know what she knew yet. He came back different. He hugged her too long, like a man holding on to something fragile. He looked across the dinner table, with eyes full of grief.
Talk to me, she said.
He told her. He told her that her mother had gone to his mother. That she had said the word barren. That it was confirmed. Adaeze didn't look guilty. She didn't look exposed. She looked like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed her heart until it burst. Not because of the lie. Because of the liar. My mother said that? She pulled out her phone.
Look, she said.
The doctor's message. Progress. Hormonal imbalance. Treatable. Emeka stared. Then he asked the simple question. Why? Why would her mother do this? Adaeze looked at the table.
She breathed.
She is sharp, quiet, and she had watched her sister her whole life. Emeka, she said carefully, has your mother mentioned Adaeze to you? The look on his face, the sudden, horrified recognition, was the answer. He had been told. His mother had wrapped it in concern. We want you to be happy. Grandchildren. Adaeze's own mother agrees. He hadn't agreed. He went home confused. But the seed was planted. Voices whispering that his marriage was wrong. And the only voice that could correct the record, Adaeze, had been silent because she didn't know the record was being written. That night, they didn't argue. They sat until midnight. Then 2 a.m. It was a reckoning. She cried the specific tears of exhaustion from carrying something beautiful through a crowd that kept bumping into her. By morning, 2 things were decided. 1. Emeka would call his mother and tell her, no softness, that his marriage was not up for review. 2. Adaeze would drive to her mother's house. Not to scream. To understand. She sat in the parlor where she learned to read. She looked at Oluwaku. Tell me what you did. And why? Oluwaku tried denial. Adaeze waited.
Cold. Clear.
Mama, I know what you said. Do not insult me by lying. The silence that followed had weight. Oluwaku began to cry. And Adaeze learned that you can love someone and watch them destroy you at the same time. Why Obi? Adaeze asked. The answer was a knife. Obi struggles. You have always been fine. Translation, because you are strong, it is safe to hurt you. You will survive. Just as the wound became a canyon, the phone rang. It was Obi, but it was Emeka who had forced her hand. He called the sister who wanted to steal him and demanded she tell the truth. On the kitchen stool, Adaeze listened as Obi confessed. I told her to do it. The jealousy, the envy, the plan, it all came spilling out like poison from a lanced boil. Why Obi? Adaeze asked. Oluwaku wiped her face. The truth came out, small and ugly. Adaeze, you have always been fine. You always manage. Obi struggles. I worry about Obi. She said it like it was obvious. Like it was mercy. Adaeze stared. Because I manage, she whispered. I did not need protection. And because I did not need protection, it was safe to sacrifice me. There it was. The equation of a mother's love. Devotion to the weak child justifies the betrayal of the strong one. Adaeze did not end her marriage. Emeka refused to entertain the idea of Obi. When his mother called again, he told her, Mama, if you loved me, you would want the wife I chose. I chose Adaeze. If you bring Obi's name again, I will know you don't love me. That shut down Mama Adaeze. But the ripple spread. Family gatherings became minefields. People whispered. Some blamed Adaeze for not being pregnant yet. The audacity. Blaming the target for standing still while the arrow was aimed. Then Obi called. Thursday evening. Adaeze was in the kitchen. She stared at the name on the screen. She answered. Ada? Obi's voice was strange.
Tight.
I need to tell you something. Silence. I did what I did because I told her to. The kitchen went completely quiet. I told her about the baby situation. I pushed her. I kept saying Emeka deserved better. I knew what she would say. I let it happen. Why are you telling me this? Adaeze asked. The pause was a canyon. Because Emeka called me. Adaeze blinked. Emeka? He called and said I was the person most responsible for your pain. He said if I had a conscience left, I would call and tell you the truth. Her husband. He had reached for the piece of the puzzle she had known to reach for. Do you love him? Adaeze asked her sister. I thought I did. Obi wept. I was just jealous of your peace. I am not forgiving you today, Adaeze said. Her voice was steady. Hating you will not grow my child. It will not build my marriage. I am going to put this phone down. Someday, I will decide if I want a sister. She ended the call. She sat in the quiet kitchen. Dusk turned the world golden outside. She could hear a generator start up, children playing. Normal life. She picked up the phone. "Come home," she told Emeka. "Are you angry I called her?" he asked. "No," she said. "I needed her to own it." Months passed. The treatment worked.
Slowly.
Adaeze didn't cut her mother off. She did something harder. She let Oluoka sit in her parlor and confess. "I thought you were strong enough to survive it," Oluoka said. The rawest truth yet. She used her daughter's strength as a weapon. It wasn't a perfect apology. It was acknowledgement. And sometimes, a house can be rebuilt one brick at a time. Mama Adaeze had her own reckoning. Opening the door not with excuses, but with food. "Your food is on the stove." A beginning. And then, on an ordinary Wednesday, everything changed. Oluoku came on a Sunday. Uninvited. No obi. No drama. She sat in Adaeze's parlor and stripped the armor off. "I thought you were strong enough to survive it." Adaeze stared. "I thought you would be all right. That obi needed this more. I used your strength as an excuse to hurt you." She didn't say sorry. But she said, "I know what I did." That was the brick. They drank tea. The silence changed. It was no longer a wound. It was a construction site. Mama Adaeze opened the door. Adaeze and Emeka came to visit. The two women looked at each other, daughter-in-law and the woman who almost discarded her. Mama Adaeze didn't make a speech. She just stepped aside.
"Come in, my daughter."
"Your food is on the stove." Small. Insufficient. But a door left open. Over the next months, Mama Adaeze watched the way her son looked at Adaeze. The specific, private joy of a man exactly where he wanted to be. She called one evening. "I was foolish. I almost destroyed what my son built. Forgive an old woman." The twist came on a Wednesday. Adaeze had been tired, nauseous, sensitive to the smell of pepper soup. She took a test, alone, on the edge of the bathtub. She looked at the result for a long time. Then she called Emeka. "Come home." She didn't tell him why. He drove faster than he should have. He burst through the door to find her standing in the middle of the living room. She held it out. He looked at the stick. He looked at her. Emeka Adaeze, civil engineer, composed man, sat down on his living room floor and wept. He didn't just cry for the baby. He cried for the months of fear. For the night his mother betrayed them. For the lie that almost won. Adaeze slid down next to him on the floor. She put her arm around him. He took her face in his hands, the way he had on their wedding day. "Even if this had not happened," he said, "I was staying.
I was always staying."
The news moved like a flood. Oluoka wept, held her daughter, finally said the words, "Forgive me." Obi sent a message, "I am truly sorry." Adaeze replied, "I know." Not an easy friendship. Years of distance to come. But a door left open. Mama Adaeze called, her voice unrecognizable. "My daughter." She put the weight on daughter like an apology. 9 months later, Adaeze held him.
"A boy."
Chisatir. "God has provided." Emeka stood at the window, holding his son with the terrified gentleness of a man holding something more precious than air. Adaeze learned that strength is not a reason to sacrifice someone. She learned that her husband was exactly who she believed him to be. She learned that love and good judgment are not the same thing. Her mother loved her, yes, but damagingly. Understanding that wasn't giving up. It was seeing clearly. Chisatir grew up knowing his name had a story. He knew he had been hoped for. He knew his grandmother looked at him with gratitude, apology, and a second chance to love someone right. The hardest betrayals come from the safe places. But what comes after can be more beautiful than what came before. Not because the wound disappears, because you discover what you are made of. Adaeze learned to receive strength differently. "Yes, I am strong," she told herself, "and I also need to be protected." Both things can be true. Her marriage had been tested. Her sense of self had been tested. What remained was hers in a way it had never been before. Not because it almost got taken. Because it was chosen again and again in the hardest moments by everyone who mattered. She looked at Emeka across the room one night. He was reading.
She didn't say anything.
She just felt the safety. Chisatir grew up. He didn't know all the details. Children don't need to carry the weight of adult failure. But he knew the house he grew up in was a house that had been through a fire and came out stronger. He knew his parents looked at each other a certain way. He knew his name was a testimony. One day, he asked his father why Grandma Oluka looked at him so strangely sometimes. Emeka paused. "Because you," he said, "are a second chance, my son." The betrayal changed the family architecture. Oluka never fully healed the wound. Some scars remain. But she showed up. Every Sunday. She held that boy like he was the most important thing in the world. Because to her, he was the proof that God gives second chances even to women who don't deserve them. She stopped playing favorites. When Obi struggled again, Oluka helped, but she didn't sacrifice anyone else to do it. She finally learned the lesson. Love is not a zero-sum game. Obi stayed away for a long time. She moved to another city. She started a small business that actually worked. She sent money for Chisatir's school fees, anonymous at first, then signed. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just did the work. One Christmas, she came home. Adaeze opened the door. They stood there. No hug. No drama. Adaeze stepped aside. The food is in the kitchen. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a ceasefire. A door left open. If this story hit you somewhere real, it's because you know, the hardest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who were supposed to be safe. The ones who carried us. Adaeze did not become bitter. She did not let the wound define her. She decided to keep loving, even when love had cost her everything. Because what comes after the betrayal can be more beautiful than what came before. Not because you forget, but because you remember exactly what you're made of. And sometimes that surprises you.